I'm here on Flagstaff Mountain. I'm talking to the legendary climber, Pat Ament. Pat Ament, do you have a premiere of your new film, Disciples of Gill, tonight? Is that true?
Yeah, that's right. I have managed to hobble over here from Peru to Colorado, and decided that the best place to show my first draft would be with my friends in Boulder and make them suffer through it. And I see people are getting fairly excited about it, and that worries me greatly because it's just a step above a home movie, really. But it's not Dr. Zhivago by any stretch of the imagination. But there are some fun things in it, some interviews with some people that have never been interviewed before, such as Barry Bates, who was the best boulderer in Yosemite in the late 60s, and Greg Lowe, who was one of the great free climbers and back in the golden age. And the movie kind of focuses on the golden age of climbing, and which I refer to as the early and later 60s. You know, I say in the movie that every time is a golden age for someone. But this was kind of when bouldering really began to become an art in its own right, and people following Gill. Gill was really the pioneer, but after that we had, you know, some other people, some people I kind of loosely refer to as his disciples, such as Richard Goldstone, and I came along too, and we all became his kind of family and climbers, and it was a little subculture of the main climbing world, and we weren't really accepted that well by the mountaineering world, who, you know, they thought of the big mountains and how important it was to get to the top of a Himalayan peak, and whereas bouldering was just kind of practice climbing, and they didn't take it too seriously.
Now, Bob Culp called that trick climbing. Do you remember those days?
In the old days, it was called trick climbing. I think Ray Northcutt came up with that phrase, maybe it was Bob, but they were the two top boulderers at the time, Northcutt and Culp. Culp was my initial inspiration. I loved going out with him. He'd take me up in some of these routes right around here. In fact, he took me to King Conquer here when I made the first ascent of it.
You're kidding, Bob Culp.
Right, yeah, he said, here's a route that I think we could do a first ascent on, and I managed to climb it, and that was way back in 63 or 4, somewhere in there, and I was just a kid, and he was just a phenomenal boulderer.
Now, Pat, did you do a handstand on the top of King Conquer when you were done?
No, I hadn't learned how to do those things yet, but that was after I got more with Dave Rearick. He became my mentor in the mid-60s, and I had idolized him. Of course, he had done the first ascent of the Diamond, you know, and when he moved to Boulder, I got in touch with him, and we started free climbing and doing all kinds of things. And he was a gymnast, and I was an aspiring gymnast, and we worked on our hand balancing and so forth. And I got to where I could do a one-arm handstand. When I got to the
one-arm handstand.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Pat.
And we would do. When I got to the University of Colorado, I became a fairly serious gymnast then, and we trained every day. And I would do one-arm handstands on the tops of lots of the rocks and scare people that I was taking up climbing. You know, they would think I was a little crazy, but yeah, gymnastics was a major contributor to my success as a climber. I taught myself how to do. I wasn't nearly as strong as John Gill and a lot of people, but I developed other kinds of strengths. Like I had real good pushing strength, I found, and I could do a hollow back press off the floor. That's where your body's straight and you push up slowly without kicking into a handstand. And
without using your arms, Pat?
No, you use your arms. Yeah, you push up. It's like a push-up, except you start from laying with a straight body on the floor.
Oh, okay.
And then you press upward slowly into a handstand. It's a pretty hard move, but I learned from that. I kind of progressed to the OneArm Mantle, which is where you put your hand high above you on a little, say, 1-inch ledge, and you pull up with one arm, and you pop your hand onto that, and then you do a OneArm Mantle, and and then you step with your foot onto that and then try to stand up. And I managed to do that a few times on the gym wall in the gymnastics room, and then I was able to apply it to a few climbs here on Flagstaff. There's a down there.
Rock named that. That's
that
where you
why we named it, because
that?
I was doing nothing but one-arm routes there.
Oh, interesting.
That's why we called it the one-arm rocks.
Who'd you do that with, Pat?
No one did that with me. I did it myself, but when I was doing a bunch of routes there, it was with Bob Camps. He came out.
Okay, sure.
He came out to visit me, and And we spent a whole evening, well past dark, trying to do all those routes there. With, we had a lie back on the left side that you reach up and grab it, and you have to hop your hand up the lie back, and then another one that had a different kind of move. But I managed to do that difficult OneArm Mantle, and that was just, sort of specialized strength, and that I was able to apply to bouldering. But I loved bouldering, and you'll see in the movie tonight that a lot of the things that we shot are easy climbs. I mean, and my message in that is that we just liked climbing, and it didn't matter whether it was a hard route or an easy route. And sometimes Gill and I would spend hours just doing the simplest traverses, and just because it was fun to be moving on the rock. And every now and then we'd get psyched about some particular problem that was a hard thing that we'd work on and try to get it, But nowadays it seems like people are very caught up in the numbers and and finding these goals and things, and they don't climb with that more relaxed kind of feel. I honestly believe Gill would have climbed at a much higher standard. He could have done anything that people are doing today, in my opinion, had he wanted to, but he just kind of climbed at whatever level was the most comfortable for him. And when he did things like in Pueblo, like the fatted calf, that hard route, and when he did things like the eliminator boulders, on Fort Collins, those were well within his ability. They weren't even really pushing his limits by any stretch of the imagination. He said when he was young, that he would literally throw his body. When he was a speed rope climber, he would throw his body past his hand, grab and throw it again.
Speed rope climber.
Yeah,
I remember hearing about that.
He would climb to the top of the gym in 3.8 seconds.
What?
The world record is 2.8 seconds, but at least then it was. I don't know if it's been beaten, but in 3.8 seconds, you cannot stand on the ground and pull a rope through your hand that fast, much less do it in a gym all the way to the top. You can't do it.
That must have made for great training for climbing.
Oh yeah, climbing was just a logical thing for him to take that kind of supernatural strength, if you will, and apply it to the rocks. But more important than any strength or anything, he was just a great guy, and he always has been, and he still is, a great individual, a human being, with a lot of humility and generosity. He's always given everybody else more credit than himself, and that's something that I've so admired about him. There are some people that will just cut you down, and put you in your place, and he's so welcoming and caring about just humanity in general and other people, but he and I have had great memories together, and I look forward to showing the film tonight. I just hope people can tolerate the fact that it's kind of rough around the edges. I'm still working on it. I hope to finish it, in fact, in the next month or so. I was slowed down because I fell when I was making the movie, actually, about 15-20 feet to the ground, and got a severe compression bruise on my femur, and I was laid up in excruciating pain for 3.5 weeks. And the fellow that was helping me edit it, I would tell him what I wanted to do, and I'd send him an email message, and he'd send back a copy, and it would be all wrong, and I'd have to tell him to start over. And it was terrible because I should have been there, but for this injury. So I'm a little behind schedule, but the people tonight will see the something that is what we call the, it's kind of the first draft, and I'll get some reactions, and we'll see how it goes from there, and we can build on it from that point. I want to make 2 or 3 other in a series. This is going to be the first in a series.
I'm surprised you're letting that information out so soon.
Well, it seems to have gotten out, so it doesn't matter. This is a film that stands on its own all by itself, but I want to go into greater depth, with the climbers that followed Gill in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and then all up to the present, and so it'll be a real, document that will capture some of his effect on the climbing world.
We've been chatting with Pat Ament. Pat Ament has his premiere of his new movie, Disciples of Gill, tonight at Neptune Mountaineering. For Front Range Bouldering and Climb Talk, I'm Mike Brooks.